Okay, this is Dear Esther. I figured this was a good enough inaugural video for my series of audio commentaries that I'm going to do. I really like this game a lot. It's a game that I first played in 2012 in the summer, so that's about a year ago, and played it on a 2010 Mac Mini, actually. And this is like the only game at the time, or probably currently too, with 3D graphics that it can play fairly well. I wanted to do this series and sort of talk about games and how they relate to film and how narrative works in either of them, and I thought this was a good place to start. I'm gonna spoil things probably before they even happen in the game, so just be wary of that. But I like this area right at the beginning. They put this basically red herring. It's almost a red herring, because this is like really spooky. It's clearly designed to be so. There are lots of things that they could have put right at the beginning of this, but this is what they chose. It sort of looks like a philosophical book or something like that. And we get our first hint at this painted scientific stuff. This is some chemical compounds. I don't know if they actually have any real significance, but you know, carbon, oxygen, hydrogen. It's an alcohol molecule, but I'm not so sure that it has the significance that people think. And maybe I'll explain why I think that at some point. But you can hear in the background there are all these spooky sounds, and there's that, which I forgot about. Sorry, got a clicking noise next to the mic there a bit. And some more of this paint and stuff, which you see a lot of. Luminous, whatever paint. So yeah, and this is your first decision. I haven't really played this in a long time. I'm pretty sure that this is basically the dead end, or it's the unimportant part. But we have the narrator. I think it's about to pop up another narration here, but the narration is done by narrating character that we don't know who it is really, but the assumption is that it's like the lover.
Donnelly reported the legend of the hermit, a holy man who sought solitude in its most pure form.
Of Esther.
Allegedly,
he's writing these letters to Esther. And I think we'll just be able to look out here. It's foreshadowing to that cave, or just sort of a preview. That's where we will go at some point, if we so choose. It's not really a necessary area. There are lots, people talk a little bit about this game, and whether it's a game at all. I am inclined to say that it is a game. I don't think there's a way across here. I think we'll have to fall, yeah.
I appear to be an unworthy subject of his solitude.
And, but whether it's a game, some people think it's not a game. I guess you would call it sort of a art installation that you can just happen to be able to buy and put on your computer. And I get that, but I'm inclined to call something by the label that the creator wants to call it. So if they want to call it a game, then I'm fine with that. Likewise, if they want to call something art, then I'm willing to say, okay, that's art.
Those islands in the distance, I'm sure, are nothing more than relics of another time, sleeping giants, somnambulist gods laid down for a final dreaming. I wash the sand from my lips and grip my wrist ever more tightly.
And this is supposed to take place on some Scottish island or something. I forget the name of the chain of islands, but it's just an unnamed island near Scotland, basically. And the narration's done with this sort of vague, almost northern, but not really, just vague British accent. So yeah, so this is our second look at something sort of symbolism that we don't really know what it is. This especially, like, you can tell what the other thing is, but there are these chemical compounds, but this is just like, I don't know, like some kind of plotted graph or something like that. It could be a map. I'm not sure. I don't even know if that symbol pops up again in the game. We're coming to a dead end here, but I figured we'd show, what it means to come to these dead ends.
Dear Esther, I found myself to be as featureless as
these
this
story elements.
as shallow and unoccupied as this bay, a listless wreck without identification. My rocks are these bones, and a careful...
But yeah, there are a lot of, if we went out into the water, I guess we would, sort of drown and have to restart, but there are a lot of, there's a lot of science, sort of science symbolism in this game, and, I guess there's some debate as to what the story means. I think that this has a lot of similarities with a game like Braid insofar, well, it just has a lot of similarities as far as who you think the protagonist is and what you think is going on behind. You have this love story, but behind that there's like this general sense of failure or fallen state that the narrator caused. We don't really know why the narrator came to the island, but he seems to have had some task in mind, and so whether it's an obsession with that or some other obsession or alcoholism leading to the crash, I think all these things sort of combine together, but that includes this sense of like some sort of scientific endeavor. It's something that I want to talk about, which this game, I realize now, deals with a lot more heavily than I might have first thought before I started to make this video, because I just didn't remember, but that this is one of these stories, cliched stories, that sort of implies that science is bad and this sort of vague spiritualism is good, sort of valuing worldviews and saying which is good or which is bad. Braid clearly does it. It's like, it's not, the alternative there isn't necessarily spiritual at all. I don't think there's any spiritualism to that game, but I know I hate that word spiritualism, but I'll get into that later.
When someone had died...
But they both seem to say that, science is bad, or that it's not an authentic sort of human whatever, endeavor, I guess, human endeavor. In the list of human endeavors, science is just a tool, and it can be bad, and stuff like that. Which I hate when it's done. I hate it a lot. It's done far too frequently. The only thing that I can think of that clearly chooses the opposite path, speaking of choosing paths, choosing the opposite sort of idea is Contact, and that's clearly, the story is written by Carl Sagan, and so forth, and it's clearly was designed to be such a story that isn't like trashing science and saying science is bad.
Despite their tedious inclination to quote scripture, they seem to me the most godforsaken of all the inhabitants of the Outer Isles. Indeed, in this case, the very gravity of that term, forsaken by God.
But Contact was clearly, written and designed to be, to show how there can be wonder in science, and, it's trying to be countercultural and sort of like, being sort of preachy to Hollywood in general. The movie is, anyway, because, the protagonist is female and is basically not very sexualized and so on, and so there's that, and there's also the science thing, and it sort of errs on the side of saying science is, well, at least science is legitimate, and we come to a point of no return here. It's sort of trivial at this point because there's basically nothing back there that's interesting.
tried to connect to one another. Although he knew I hadn't come in search of an apology, reason, or retribution, he still spiraled in.
And so, you know, in movies you see this a lot, this idea that science is bad, you know, science is not good. And Damon Lindelof is one person who's sort of become popular in film, and he does a lot of science fiction stuff. And he does this a lot, and I don't really dislike him. I think Lindelof does lots of cool things, but that, you know, whenever he engages science and like religion or some kind of vague sense of spiritualism, he always errs on the side of saying science is dumb, or scientists are dumb, or that it's not as worthy as that science is just trivial compared to sort of this non-specific, vague spiritualism. He's trying to, you know, when Hollywood does this, they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. They're trying to not offend anyone, but then they end up not really saying anything when they don't specify which religion they're talking about. I don't think, you know, and he's trying to find like in Prometheus specifically, he's trying to find like a happy medium, like, because clearly they're scientists, you know, as a plot device, but they're being sort of spiritual and like affirming some sort of spiritualistic value, or, you know, sense of what is our origin, which a lot of it's a theory of religion of mine, actually, that I authored once, that's what religion is. It's a community or a practice that's aimed at sort of valuing origin as being supreme. So whether that origin is like a god or something else, that's what religion is. But that's just, you know, a hypothesis that I posed at one point. I'm not sure that I really agree with it anymore. I posed academically, that is. So just undergraduate. Let's not pretend that I'm like super well versed on this. Just undergraduate stuff.
Fall off into my pockets like loose change. If I could stomach, I'd eat. But all I seem capable of.
But yeah, so anyway, the reason that all that annoys me, all these vague spiritualism things, is just because I think that there actually is a lot of beauty and awe in science, in recognizing that, you know, you are both connected to the whole world around you, but the whole world around you is so vast that that while you are connected, you're almost trivial, like you're of trivial importance, but you are part of the universe. You're part of the living universe around you. But this is something in the game that changes depending on your playthrough. There's this chemistry book here, and then there's also a Bible that you can get, and sometimes you can even get both of them. So you probably will have seen that as the opening of this. So I don't know how the game, whether the game generates that randomly, or if it has something to do with your pacing, because that's all it could really detect is your pacing. Or I guess if you looked really closely at the chemistry things, it might do that. I definitely did look closely at the chemistry things a couple times. I didn't skip over them, and in fact I ignored the more organic symbols. So anyway, it's just something about the game design. Can't remember. Oh yeah, if I go down there, I think that's like I'll fall down to where I started, basically, or something. I don't know. Anyway, we're gonna go this way. We're not gonna go that way. But I think I'm gonna stop in a second. But I think that the themes of this game back there, they set up this clear dichotomy between science and religion. And what's good about this game is it's very open-ended. It doesn't, I guess in that case of the book on the ground, it sort of implies that you're making a decision somehow. I don't know how they decide that, but it does sort of find It does sort of imply a difference there that I might have made as a choice. But otherwise, it's a pretty open-ended game. And so I'm probably going to cut here and then come back to it later. But thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, whatever, comment. Try to be attentive to comments. I basically have no subscribers right now. But I'm just getting started, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, thank you for watching.
Dear Esther, I have now driven the stretch of the M5 between Exeter and Bristol over 21 times. But although I have all the reports and all the witnesses, and have cross-referenced them within a millimetre using my ordnance survey...